Yes, we are live again. Today is Friday, and we are back with Building the Future Together series. So, very good evening to everyone. Welcome to Building the Future Together series as Impact turns 20. Today, we are going to talk about a lesser known specialty in PR, that is litigation PR in India. To discuss on the topic, I have a fellow PR buddy, Aman Abbas, co-founder and CEO Commwiser. Welcome, Aman.
Thank you very much, Kulpreet. Thanks for having me here.
Pleasure is all mine. So before we kind of start our conversation, I would like to tell our listeners on who you are. So Aman leads the strategy and planning for client campaigns at Commwiser. He has spent over 2 decades working with leading global brands. He is one of the pioneers in law firm marketing and litigation PR in India. His experience of working with organizations such as KPMG in India, Amarchand Mangaldas, and then Amarchand Mangaldas gives him a good understanding of working environment in the regulatory industry. He also worked extensively on strategy and brand transformation while the split took place at Amarchand Mangaldas. He has steered the communication for organizations during complex situations and is well versed with the nuances of it. He has been in leadership roles in multiple PR agencies, managing their key accounts such as Google, Deloitte, and many more. He is the recipient of the Corporate Excellence Award by IPE and has been named as one of the top 100 influencers in the PR industry by Exchange for Media. With that, heavyweight guest which whom we have today, let me, begin by asking you, Aman. As the industry and businesses are growing, litigation among various parties are becoming very common. So, how has been the litigation PR servicing shaping up globally, and also give us a brief on what is litigation PR?
See, globally, it's been there for many years, and globally, the US and all, there are litigators who have actually gone into communications and they've been leading litigation PR. US is a litigating society. London as well is at the forefront of litigation PR. In India, traditionally, what has happened is that any agency which is working with an organization, and when the organization gets into litigation, they actually work in bits and pieces on in that situation. It's a very
So,
nuanced
do we see
discipline
it?
where you need it.
The voice is a little coming as a lag.
Okay.
And
um,
so now it's okay. Now it's fine. So you
Better
can
now.
start again. Yes, yes, better.
Okay.
Okay, there is some issue in the digital world. I can't hear Aman. Aman, can you hear me?
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. Yes, now I can hear you. There was some gap coming, so now I can hear you. Yes. So my
Just
question was that how is litigation PR shaping up globally? And let me now add that do you see an organized litigation PR landscape emerging in India now?
No, so globally, I think it's in a very matured stage already. In the US, in London, there are agencies who are specializing in litigation PR. In India, that was not the case. In fact, usually in India, the agencies which are working with an organization which gets into a dispute or complex situation, they are the ones who normally deal with that situation. But now this is becoming more and more specialized and much more nuanced. And that's where I think more specialized people and teams would are needed to kind of look at this discipline. One needs to have a good understanding of the regulatory landscape. You needed to understand the laws, you needed to understand the court processes Otherwise, you'll end up, you know, doing contempt of the court, and then that's not a good situation to be in. So, it's a very nuanced discipline, and therefore, I think in the times to come, you will have more specialized people working in the field.
So what I get is from your answer is that even litigation PR firms need to have lawyers as a
Yeah,
part
I
of their
think.
team.
So, if you are doing litigation PR, you have to work very closely with lawyers. Okay, the agencies should not work stand alone, because you needed to understand, the legal strategy, and you needed to understand where to speak, when to speak, and what to speak, and you'll have to work very closely with the lawyers. And
Right.
let me just take a step back and try to explain what litigation PR means. It means that managing an organization's reputation when the organization is litigating. It is not about thinking about court outcomes, because court judgments are based on the facts and the evidences, and not really the media stories. So that is something which I really wanted to clarify, that this is more about giving out the right narrative to be able to manage the reputation of the organization. Your voice is gone. I cannot hear you now.
I was on mute. Thanks for telling me that. Okay, so that's a very valid point, Aman, because very rightly said that litigation PR does not influence any court proceedings, because court proceedings are basically based on facts and not on news reporting. So that's a clarification at the very start, which is needed. Tell us that like you said, that you build a narrative. So what is the kind of right narrative which you kind of engage in, and is it only media or it is beyond media? What are the activities, stakeholder management? What is the entire litigation PR process involved, in here in India?
Okay, so
Because
basically there are a couple of things that you needed to understand before you start off the process. One is that what is the existing reputation of the organization? What are the reputational drivers? Are they facing any challenges already? You have to be cognizant of all those things, and then you create a strategy that how your PR process is going to pan out. You do scenario planning. You try to figure out what could be the possible scenarios and be ready for those scenarios, right at the beginning. There's an old saying that the more you sweat in the peace, the less you bleed in the war. So, with that philosophy, you have to be like really, really well prepared with your scenarios, with your Q&As, with your messaging, and then you get into the game. And you needed to actually also understand that, whether you wanted to go aggressive, or whether you wanted to kind of, defend your position, whether to keep quiet, whether to speak up. Sometimes, keeping quiet doesn't really help, because then somebody else sets the narrative for you, and that's where you have to think that, how do you actually, set the narrative about your organization.
Yes, that's a very insightful point, Aman, which you mentioned that please do not let others set your narrative. Have the narrative in your control, or at least it should be shared from your perception. So that's an important point. So tell us, Aman, that how important is internal audience in litigation PR, and how what are the tools which you use to kind of influence or engage with the internal audience of a corporate.
Yeah, thank you so much for reminding me of the question, where you asked whether it is only about media engagement or it is about a holistic campaign. This is definitely a holistic campaign that you should actually look at. And internal audience is a very, very important stakeholder, because getting to know about a litigation or a dispute or a complex situation about your organization from media is not the best thing, honestly. I mean, if you're working in an organization, you would want to know what's happening from the management of the company. And therefore, it is important for the management to keep the internal stakeholders right at the center and communicate with them about the situation that you are in and how you are planning to fare in your businesses and whether this affects any business or not. So you will have to you know basically give that confidence to the internal stakeholder that it is not going to affect your day-to-day functioning, and there is a certain way to take care of it. And I think that way they are basically, their anxiety is taken care of.
Yes, that's a very right point. Anxiety is taken care of, because a lot of things go out of hand when you don't deal with people's emotions and anxiety. Aman, tell us, since litigation is all about regulatory and judicial landscape, and the corporates basically kind of initially reach out to law firms, and then those law firms engage the PR agencies, or a PR expert. So is this model working in India, or do we have corporates coming up directly seeking for litigation PR exclusively from specialized agencies like yours?
So I'll tell you something. When we talk about litigation PR, it starts right from the pre-litigation process, because sometimes when the dispute is coming up, before it actually goes into the courts, that something of that sort is coming up. So it starts from pre-trial stage, okay? And sometimes organizations, the law firms, even the communicators try to resolve things before it actually hits the court, and that's a complex situation or a dispute situation. So that's where it starts, and then it gets into if needed, then it gets into the litigation mode, and then even post litigation mode, there is a reputation management that is required to be done, because any organization which gets into any kind of litigation, take it for granted that it has a bearing on its reputation. Okay. And I was reading one of the Deloitte surveys a couple of years ago, and the survey was more on risk management, and they basically said that it is the reputation that takes longest to repair actually for any organization. Rest everything you can do faster. So reputation is one very important thing. Now coming to the question that how really the mechanics of the relationship works. So far our experience is that mostly you know we are instructed by the law firms and clients jointly, and that is the right way of doing things. I don't think that a PR agency or a litigation PR firm can work independently in the case of disputes. They will have to work hand in hand with lawyers. So far we have been instructed by lawyers. Most of our cases, matters that we've worked on, have come through lawyers, and it's a joint instructions that actually come in. And it is very important to uh, to keep everybody aligned on the same platform, where when it comes to the litigation, PR strategy and the communications and everything.
Right. Before when we were chatting, Aman, you were talking about stakeholder engagement. So, does litigation PR help in educating and influencing stakeholders, and which are the tools which you're using, maybe, getting some community engagement also into influencer engagement? So tell us more about stakeholder management and engagement through litigation PR.
There's a lot of conversation about influencers these days. Today, also, you must have seen some stories that are coming in, which are digital influencers. But See, basically, what happens is that in any communication campaign that you do, it is important that you think about the ultimate objective of building your reputation, and therefore, whatever are the drivers of that, you would actually take care of each and every one of them. Like for example, in some cases, you know, like for example, if you're talking, it could be like any say gender advocates, or any third parties which have which whose opinion matters in this kind of case. You when you actually derive your strategy, you keep each one of them in your mind, and then you try to present your case and your narrative to them to be able to get them by your side. So every constituent and everybody whose opinion matters in that situation, you needed to have them by your side. So the role of the litigation PR people is also to think about the engagement process and the engagement strategies with every opinion maker in that entire scenario, and engage with them and get them by your side. And it's no guarantee that they would come by your side, but that's the effort that you have to make.
Yes. Aman, we have a lot of people joining us live, and we have few questions also coming in. And we have a question from our dearest friend. We know whose question it is. It is from Anup Sharma Bihari. Uh, so he's asking, and he's asked a very, very interesting question, and actually the right question. It was there in my mind as well. What is one of the biggest challenge faced by PR firms while working on litigation issues? Does media and other stakeholders entertain the PR firms for such cases? Because that's really the point. If somebody is engaging a PR agency, so is media ready to listen to you or your
So
side of the story, or build a narrative on what you want?
no, so if media is writing on an issue, they would definitely listen to your side of the story as well. If there are two sides which are fighting with each other, which are at loggerheads, uh, both sides are entitled to their opinion and their representation in the media, and that's what you do. I mean, like for example, we were discussing in the morning, and you said that in the entire Riya Chakrabarti scenario, ultimately, I mean, she gave a detailed interview and people heard her as well. So why not? I think in any case that happens, in any matter that happens, all the parties which are involved in it, everybody's opinion matters. And many a times companies don't reach out to media directly, they reach out through their PR agents. So yeah, they definitely listen to you.
So, but what Anup is asking, what are the challenges you face?
um, See, the thing is that everybody tries to run their own narrative. So it is very important for you to be cognizant of that, and present your arguments in such a way that they actually look credible. That's the most important thing, because the moment that doesn't happen, then you lose the interest of other stakeholders. So that's where it is.
Yes. And I want just to add to what you're saying, though I am not a litigation PR expert, you are. But yeah, I am a PR strategist and expert. But, to add to what you're saying, media, it's the role of media to kind of showcase both the perspectives. So I
Exactly.
think, yeah, so I think in that sense, it is very important for the media. It's the media's one of the key duties. It cannot ignore, right? So I think, Anup, that answers your questions. You can tell us in the chat. Anup has another question for you, Aman. I think he has taken this very seriously, and he's got another new question. So he's asking is that what are the skill sets required to understand and manage such issues? And is there a talent available? That's again a very valid question because, as you know, Aman, in PR sector, we know that there is a shortage of talent. And here we are talking about litigation PR, which is like super speciality. So, where is the talent? Where are you getting the talent from, and how do you manage such issues? And what
Yeah.
are the skill sets here?
Yeah. So there are only two things that matter here. One is that in your life, how many of such cases have you gone through? What is the kind of experience you have, in dealing with, such kind of matters? Have you ever been to a high court? Have you ever been to a supreme court? Have you ever heard a hearing? Do you know, how the reporting is done and all those things? So that is the experience side of it. And now the other part of it is that now actually we have, litigating lawyers. I mean, we have lawyers in our team who are working on it. So that is the kind, it's a mix of both the things. One, somebody who's very experienced, who has already done something like this, so he or she knows it by experience. The other one is that you should know it by qualification. So that is the kind of combination of talent that works, for litigation PR. And thankfully we
So,
have
do
both of them.
yes, you definitely have both of them. That's how
Yeah.
you are one of the pioneers. I do get that. But do you find a shortage? Because, because in now we are in a new normal, and we will see a lot of litigation coming up, because there are a lot of mergers happening, a lot of buyouts happening, and a lot of the entire corporate sector and business economy is going to change in next few years. So, do you see a talent which needs to be nurtured?
Yeah, so because see, I'll tell you, I mean, it is important to have the understanding of, policy and regulatory landscape. It is important to have the understanding of functioning of courts. It is important to know the rules of the game over there. And therefore finding that talent is definitely not easy, definitely not easy. Even if you have lawyers who understand one side of the story, you'll have to, teach them the other side of the story. And similarly, if you have the experience, you needed to have that knowledge. So that combination is very difficult to find. But if you have a base, like for example, we have that base. Now you have to build on it, and you'll have to keep nurturing that talent, to be able to grow.
Right. We have another question. So the question comes from Aarti. She's asking, is the focus of PR strategy related to the immediate effects of litigation or its aftermath? Which basically means that, when you are doing a PR strategy for a company or an company or a corporate which is in litigation. So as you were also mentioning, you start pre-litigation and then litigation, and then there's a result. And so, what is your strategy bandwidth? And so, in terms of short-term goals and long-term goals.
Yeah, so I mean, as I said, that, you know, you needed to actually have a litigation strategy in place. You needed to have scenarios in place. So that means through the litigation process, you need to have the strategy in place. And then post litigation, it is more about reputation building. So that is how it actually works.
Right. Okay, now Aman, let's talk about Commwiser and you as specialist in this area. So, how do you see, say, next 5 years coming up in this particular specialization? And what is the demand you see coming up? And how are you and your agency gearing up to this demand?
Okay, so we started out with two things primarily in legal space. One is law firm marketing, which is a very nuanced field, and you needed to work in a law firm to be able to understand that, because it's not taught in any school. Okay, so that
Yes,
is something.
I get that. Yes, I
So that
get that. I had the privilege of doing some work for a few law firms, though not
yeah.
into litigation, but yeah, other things. Yes, I do get that.
Yeah, and till now, whatever engagement law firms have with the PR agency is mostly to do with media engagement, but there are lots of other things also to it. Like for example, how do you manage their presence in the league tables? How do you present yourself to the league tables? How do you actually ensure that the rankings of the law firms in the directories, the global directories, which matter a lot. How do you actually do those submissions? So there are lots of then I think there are a lot of BD related, business development related work in law firms. So I think these are the fields which are very specialized fields, and that's where, in fact, because I have worked in a law firm, and my colleague has worked in a law firm, we've got that advantage, and that's why we are working with some of very good firms in India. So that was one set of things, and the other one is litigation PR that we've spoken about. What we are trying to do is that besides all the experience that we have and the matters that we are working on right now, we are also trying to kind of lean on few of our global colleagues, okay, and we are working with some of the global firms on the strategy bit, and we are in the near future you will see some bit of a collaboration that is going to come on the way, and we would definitely be learning a lot from the matured markets where this has been done quite a bit in a more structured way, and that's how we would be learning, and we will be implementing a lot of stuff in Indian market. And that is also going to be advantageous to a lot of global clients who wanted to kind of have that comfort. So collaborations with those global firms is going to help in that manner. And I think this field is going to definitely grow. And India is not the only market we are looking at right now. Entire Southeast Asia, we have already worked in some of the countries with some of the firms, and we've also started another initiative called Lawwiser, which is basically a knowledge platform for the legal fraternity. And we are working with countries in Asia Pacific region, which are legal tech, which are law firms, all the allied kind of industries within the legal industry. So I think it's going to be pretty. It should be good.
Great. So, on that note, Aman, thank you so much for your time. I know you are a busy man, and handling litigation, and which is like mostly a lot of crisis all the time, and taking out such time is very valuable. It was a pleasure hosting you, and all the very best for your future.
Thank you very much, Kulpreet. Thank you so much for having me over here. It was fantastic talking to you and answering questions.
Yes, great. And let's hope this litigation PR, you are one of the pioneers. Let's see this industry growing, this segment growing. For all the listeners who have been on us with us throughout the chat, thank you so much for being there. Anup, Freddy, Arti, and there are a few more. Anup is saying all the best and thanks for the insights. Thank you, Anup. Yes, your
Thank you so
questions
much, Anup.
really brought in a lot of, I would say, positivity in our chat. So thank you, Anup, for asking the right questions. And he is the man with the right questions. I have requested him to come on
All the
building the
time.
future together. Yes.
All the
So
time.
every Friday we come with building the future together. So stay tuned till we are live again next week. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Aman, for your time.
Thank you.